Exercise is important for maintaining a healthy lifestyle, just as exercising your stock options could be important for meeting your financial goals. For those who receive equity compensation, what should you do, and what are some of the risks that you could face in setting up your plans for success? A conversation well worth your 10 minutes right here on UBS Trending. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm your host, Anthony Pastore. My colleague, Andrew Waldron, Wealth Planning Specialist, is here in the studio with us, breaking down some of the rules that you've outlined in this new guide. And we're talking about equity compensation, which not everybody receives, but many of our clients and people who watch our show do. So, Andrew, considering that, what's the first thing, if somebody receives equity compensation, what's the first thing that they should do?
Well, Anthony, I think the most important thing for folks to do is know what you don't know. Because a lot of times people end up with different types of equity compensation, and they come to us with really just trying to get a better understanding of what they have. So there are tons of different types of equity compensation, and a lot of companies kind of call them different things. I don't know how the marketing department got involved in the HR department, but at the end of the day, for the most part, it boils down to a few different types of equity compensation. You have your restricted stock units, your performance share units, which really, from a tax perspective, as soon as they vest, they end up creating a taxable event for the person that's receiving those grants. Now, another item that really provides a lot more flexibility are stock options. And there's really two different types of stock options out there. You have your non-qualified stock options, which, similar to restricted stock units and performance shares, gets taxed at ordinary income. But you also have incentive stock units. And those actually have some tax benefits around the exercise strategies that you can leverage. So understanding what you have is very important. And then some other items that we really want clients to kind of take a look at is, understanding what your grant dates are, what your vesting schedules are. Some of the tech companies that are out there are doing things a little bit differently than what we see from your older organizations, where they may have a vesting schedule on a monthly or quarterly basis, and that can kind of throw things for a loop from a tax perspective. So it's really important for folks to kind of just get a better understanding of what they have, and if they have a portal, gather as much information as they can to provide to their financial advisor, or speak to their HR department to gather that information. So that's really important to do.
Yeah, one of my first jobs, we were just talking about this, in this industry before sitting at a desk like this, was on a stock option desk, where I was explaining the options that option holders had with their options, all these options all over the place. So it can be very confusing. I remember hearing this question a lot, and I'm going to ask you this, is when should I exercise my options? Obviously, they have to fully vest first, but when's the optimal time for me to exercise those?
So we get asked that question all the time. Okay, my company is about to go public. When should I exercise? Or I just had these shares become available to me. Should I exercise now? And really, there's no simple answer to that. Because in reality, as a financial planner, what I really want to know more about is really what your financial goals are, and putting those stock options and equity compensation into the context of a broader financial plan.
Right.
So without having that understanding of what your long-term goals are, what your near-term goals are, we can't really develop a strategy around how we should exercise those options going forward. Some other considerations that I like to take into consideration is really the tax impact of your exercise strategy. Whereas I mentioned before, with incentive stock options, those are taxed a little bit differently. So if you exercise them, they may be subject to AMT tax. And what we're going through over the next few years is we all keep talking about the sunsetting of the tax laws from 2017. And there's two really important items to kind of think about when it comes to your options exercise strategy. One is that if you're in the highest tax bracket, between now and 2025, that highest tier tax bracket is 37%. But come 2026, it'll actually go to 39.6%. So that may really be an incentive for folks that are going to maintain that top tier tax bracket now and into the future to consider exercising their options. And then on the incentive stock option side, because those are typically taxed along with the alternative minimum tax, and that is carried at a lower rate, the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act actually extended the thresholds that you would be subject to an AMT tax, which is about 28%. And it's been substantially increased. So in 2026, those are going to go down to a much significantly lower number. And it will make a lot more sense if you start taking a look and you know you have incentive stock options to consider exercising now and in 2025.
You use the word considerations twice. I would probably use it again because there's so many things to consider here. And that which brings me always to the next part of this conversation, which is, there are risks with any type of investment. And obviously we want to always encourage our viewers to talk to an FA or a financial advisor about anything that we talk about on the show, but specifically with stock plans and actually, stock options, et cetera. What are some of the risks and what should they be talking to their FAs about?
So the biggest risk is, number one, putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
So you may work for that company. You may have stock options that have already been exercised, and you have existing shares in your company. And then you also have the options that are going to vest in the future. So I hate to use this as an example, but we just witnessed Silicon Valley Bank go under. And a lot of those employees may have had their salaries tied up, their existing equity that's already vested, if they haven't sold it, tied up in their investment accounts, and their options essentially go to zero. So that creates a substantial concentration risk in their portfolio.
Right.
And I mean, we say this all the time, but diversification is really the bedrock of minimizing risk in an investment portfolio. So that's really, from a risk perspective, the first consideration. Now, other considerations to take into account are really a lot of the compensation that comes into play is part of an executive compensation package, where instead of paying out millions upon millions of dollars in salary to an individual, they provide equity compensation as an incentive. So what tends to happen to folks is that they kind of look at this as, this part of their salary, they're going to continue to receive it over time. What they're not taking into consideration is the potential of an adverse event, whether it's death, termination, or other things that may come into play. And one of the things that I like to take into consideration around the compensation side is, let's not look at the downside if somebody passes away, but I'm a big skier. So what if I get into an accident on the ski slopes and I'm unable to work over the long-term period of time? A lot of disability benefits through your employers do not compensate you for your equity compensation that you would receive now and into the future. So whatever you may have received may vest and may be available to you, but if you're depending on that level of income over the next 5-10 years to maintain you and your family's lifestyle, it creates a substantial risk for you. Right. And it's really a consideration that you should make around thinking about disability insurance, long-term disability insurance outside of your group benefit packages.
That's a new one. I hadn't actually heard that, so I'm glad you mentioned that. And also, let's not forget that you could be working for a company whose share price on the day you receive that grant is $50, and the day that it's available for you to exercise, it's $25 or less or something different. So there's an opportunity. There's a chance that option could be underwater as
yes.
well. So you definitely want to talk to an advisor about what to do with all of that. Andrew, thank you so much. I know it's a really hefty topic and a lot of information, but you drilled it down for as much as you could in this short time frame. So thanks for doing that with us.
You're welcome.
Great. Andrew Waldron, Wealth Planning Specialist here at UBS. And for more information on anything Andrew and I spoke about today, visit our Insights website at ubs.com/views. And you can also follow us on social media. We're on all the major channels, including our fairly new Instagram channel at UBS Trending for UBS Studios content that you really can't find anywhere else. And as always, if you have any questions about your portfolio or anything we talked about today, make sure to speak with a financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. We hope you have a fantastic day, everybody. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. See you soon.